Part 1. Tool Town. They promised each other they'd leave when the cable went out. They counted down as one channel after another went to a static graphic, promising to return soon, followed after a few days by a black screen reading, "Feed not found." Internet service died a day later. The last days of the few remaining channels were filled with hour after hour of B-roll footage showing the chaos around the world. They could have looked out a window of their condo and seen the same thing in any direction. When the last channel went dark, they changed their promise. They'd stay until the electric went. They spent their days watching Blu-rays and playing epic duels on the Xbox. They wore headphones because the last warnings from the TV told them that any sound would draw the infected. Sound and movement were things to be avoided. Stay in place and stay quiet were the watchwords. Help was on the way. The headphones cut out the sounds from outside. Gunfire, car alarms, sirens, screams for help. Day by day, those sounds were dying away to be replaced by an unsettling silence. On day 61, the electric went. "We can't stay here," Smash said. "Sure we can," Jim Kim said. They lounged on either side of the expansive IKEA sofa and looked at their reflections in the dark screen of their 70-inch television. "Think about it. We already raided all the other condos for food. With the electric out, the water's gonna go too," Smash said. "Maybe it's a blackout. Maybe it'll come back on," Jim Kim said. "Yeah, and maybe the cable will come back on and we can watch the rest of this season of Game of Thrones. And maybe all those assholes wandering around out there will be cured, and maybe Megan Fox will knock on the door and offer me a Hummer." "Jesus, Kim." "Do we have a plan?" Jim Kim said to their reflection. "In fact, we do," Smash said. "I already hate it," Jim Kim said. But he set aside the dead Xbox control pad to listen to Smash's plan. The condo building was secure against the infected. The two entryways and basement entrance were locked tight and stout enough. They'd hold against the desultory attempts by the infected to get inside, though they'd never hold against a more determined attempt by survivors looking to make trouble. And trouble was out there. They heard the sounds of vehicle convoys prowling the nearby streets. Those trucks and cars rolled quiet, not like the government vehicles with their PA systems blaring instructions for those still forted up in their homes. A couple of times, brilliant search lamps swept over their condo building. Smash and Jim Kim lived in a 20-unit building, in what was described as a garden complex, along with 12 more identical buildings fronted by parking spaces. Their unit belonged to Smash, purchased for him by his late grandmother. Grandma was his last surviving relative. His parents died together in a car crash when he was 12. Grandma raised him the rest of the way and paid for him to go to college, as well as for the off-campus condo. It was in his name, which was not Smash. "You'll have an investment you can sell when you graduate," she'd told him. "Better than wasting money on rent for a dorm that you'll never see back. And that way you can concentrate on your studies without being disturbed by roommates." Great theory, but he flunked out freshman year anyway. The condo itself was the main distraction, a sanctuary of video games, cable TV, and a community pool in the summer. Grandma passed away before the grades for his last semester came out. Massive coronary. Smash and two of her neighbors were the only ones at the funeral. Jim Kim moved in as roommate and helped Smash with the utilities, a cheaper deal for Jim Kim than boarding. They met in Introduction to Business Administration. Jim Kim passed with an A. Smash took a pass with an incomplete. Since flunking out, Smash worked a series of minimum-wage jobs that he quickly grew bored with. He owned the condo outright and only needed to work enough to pay utilities and the condo fee. He rarely saw a future beyond the newest game releases. Now, Even that meager future looked bleak. Jim Kim, on the other hand, was a serious student and, in his junior year, spent most days at classes and most nights studying. He was living the stereotypical Asian life. His dad and mom expected great things from him. He had to work hard to justify their faith in him. A B grade was a sign that he wasn't applying himself enough. A C grade would not be tolerated. Worse grades were unthinkable. All of that was off once shit happened. Jim Kim had not heard from his family since just before the infection broke wide. His parents, his sister, and 2 younger brothers were visiting relatives in Seoul. According to the news report, Korea was part of the world pandemic. In the first days, the remaining tenants of the building took off to be with their families. Almost all of the building's occupants were students or faculty from the college, and most of them were already gone on spring break when martial law was declared. Only one resident remained. One of Jim Kim's professors lived in a 2-bedroom on the floor below. Donna McKinney shared the condo with her life partner, Karen. The pair decided to stay put, convinced that the government would sort it all out in a week or so. Jim Kim checked on them every few days to see how they were doing. Smash referred to them as Jim Kim's pet lesbians. On his next-to-last visit, Miss McKinney assured Jim Kim that they were both doing fine, though Karen was feeling a bit under the weather. Flu, maybe. A couple of days after, Jim Kim found Karen crouched on the living room floor, chewing on what was left of the professor's large intestine. He and Smash nailed the condo door shut. They could still hear occasional noises from within. The sounds of someone stumbling into furniture in a search for a way out. 3. Smash and Jim Kim couldn't settle on what to call the infected, though they both agreed that the Z word was out. Too tired. They rejected deadheads, deaders, walkers, ghouls, mopes, mooks, chompers, wastoids, biters, and a checklist of other terms. In the last days, the experts on TV were uncertain how to refer to the infected. Even as hordes of reanimated cannibal cadavers roamed the highways and byways, the talking heads and government wonks stayed away from any pejorative terms. We must remember that these were loved ones, mothers, fathers, children, and friends. We can't dismiss them or their previous lives with ugly terminology because of what is essentially a medical condition, opined one member of the many panel discussions that filled the airwaves between warnings to stay indoors and reporting incidents with the formerly living. Smash and Jim Kim referred to them as the dead by default. "I'm thinking of all the places I've worked," Smash said. They were at the kitchenette table eating frozen pizzas that had thawed. They'd only go bad anyway with the electric out. They ate by the light of an LED flashlight. It was dark within the condo, even though it was afternoon outside. The month before, they had nailed plywood over the windows to prevent any leakage of light that might be seen from the parking lot. "You worked a lot of places," Jim Kim said, wetting his finger to pick up some specks of cheese from the box. "I never found a place that suited me. Your bosses all expected you to work." "Anyhow, I made a list of our priorities," Smash said, and turned a legal pad on the table so Jim Kim could read it. Defensible shelter, food, water, electric, weapons, standalone structure with sight lines 360 degrees, sustainable environment. "You know, if you put this much thought into your studies, you'd still be enrolled," Jim Kim said. "And that would make a difference how? I mean, in the light of things, how would a degree in business help me now? I'm only saying I need achievable, short-term goals. That's my strength. This whole global fuck-up is more suited to my skill sets, okay?" Jim Kim nodded. That was true. "So of all the donkey jobs, I've had only one in a place that fits this profile. Tool Town." Smash said and took a sip of lukewarm Dr. Pepper. The one on Western, right? Isn't there a Best Buy and a GameStop there too? And a BOGO Mart and Toys R Us too. What's your point? Why not one of them? Because any place with food and pharmaceuticals is already going to be busted out, and TRU and GameStop have zero food anyway, unless you want to live on gummy bears. There's food at Tooltown? Jim Kim said. A shit ton. There's case lots of energy bars they stock at the checkouts, and stuff for the vending machines. Chips, nuts, candy bars, and soda, juice, and bottled water. And with supplies from the garden center, we can grow our own food forever. Plus, they have a rainwater collection system. It's a survivalist's wet dream. So why will it not be busted out like the other places? Because no one is stopping to pick up shit to build a deck when their flesh-eating neighbors are after their ass. It'll have electric? There's a whole department for gas generators and a 500-gallon fuel tank in the rental center. What makes the place so defensible? Jim Kim glanced at the list on the legal pad. We have cinder blocks, lumber, tools. We can fortify it from the inside. I've worked it all out. Looks like you have. This is all postgraduate work for a post-apocalypse lifestyle. That's what I'm telling you. Smash struck the tabletop with the palm of his hand. Jim Kim picked discs of pepperoni the consistency of guitar picks off a slice and ignored Smash grinning at him from the other side of the table. Jim Kim said at last, So, how do we get there? 4. From the roof, they could see the parking lot surrounding the building and the fenced lot of a shopping center that fronted on the state highway. They counted 5 infected milling around the lots. They sauntered and stumbled in a search with no pattern. Heads turned in a slow-motion scan for something to stalk down and eat. Evidence of earlier kills were in sight. They were brown stains on the asphalt now, scatterings of rags and bones covered with flies. Smash recognized a kid he used to see skateboarding around the complex. The kid still wore his knee pads and helmet. An arm hung from his shoulder by strips of tendons and swung back and forth as he walked. There was a woman in bloody nurse's scrubs, and a fat old dude who was in his birthday suit. The other buildings and the trees around them obscured their view of the other lots. A very rough census placed the possible number of infected in the complex at 40 or more. Jim Kim was studying statistics and insisted that, barring an unforeseen swarm, his educated guess would hold. Smash had a plastic tub of car keys in his hand. He matched one of the sets to a Nissan minivan parked on the north lot. He tapped the alarm key. The Mini started beeping and blinking. The nurse and the naked fatty were closest. Their heads pivoted. They picked up their saunter to a shamble and began making for the source of the noise. The other 3 were moving in that direction as well. Another stepped into view from around the corner of Building D. A heavy-set woman in a running suit. She headed for the honking until she tripped over a curb and fell sprawling. Prostrate, the woman continued on toward the noise, crawling on her belly over the asphalt, dragging herself by one remaining arm. Smash depressed the button again, and the Mini went silent. The infected continued toward it for a few paces before staggering to a stop, heads swiveling, trying to recall what drew them this far. That's how we get to your car. We draw them all the way to the Nissan while we make it out the south door to the Kim-mobile, Smash said. I guess that will work every time, Jim Kim said without commitment. You know it will. Smash slapped his roommate's shoulder. Let's go get our shit together. 5. The Nissan Mini's alarm honked. Beep, 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 beep. Its lights flashed. Yellow, white, yellow, white. A gaggle of infected clustered toward it until there were more than 30 crowded around the car. More were on the approach. Jim Kim watched the gathering through the window. He was sweating buckets in a Gore-Tex parka with his sleeves wrapped in layers of duct tape. His jeans were wrapped the same way. It was Smash's idea for quick and dirty bite-proofing. They both wore the same protection. On their heads were football helmets they'd found in a sports memorabilia collection in one of the condos they'd raided for food. Smash got Eagles. Jim Kim wore Oakland. In the early spring weather, the outfits were like wearing portable saunas. The bulk of them made it harder to move. "I think it turns out this plan sucks," Jim Kim offered. Sweat ran into his eyes from his soaked hair under the helmet. He watched the congregation of clawing and stumbling dead through a window. "Is all your stuff packed?" Smash said. He was wedging a folder of game discs and movies into a canvas tote next to the Xbox and controllers. "This was supposed to draw them away from us. I think it's calling more of them here," Jim Kim said. "Too late. We have a plan. Our shit is packed, and we are rolling." He hefted the tote and a backpack loaded with bottled water and snacks and headed for the door. He held a fire axe in his fist. "What if my Sorrento doesn't start?" "It'll start. Move your ass." Jim Kim picked up a claw hammer and followed after him. Down in the south foyer, they had the rest of their goods stacked on a rolling trolley. Smash would open the door and run to open up the car. Jim Kim would follow, pushing the cart. Smash was at the foyer doors, looking out through the glass. It was smeared with fingerprints where, over the past 2 months, infected had tried to get inside. "Looks clear," Smash said. He pulled his massive keyring from the pocket of his parka. It jangled with dozens of keys he'd collected over his employment history. He worked through the ring until he found the key he wanted. It fit the padlock clasped in a tangle of steel chain strung between the handles of the twin doors. He tossed the lock and chain aside and shot the deadbolts before pushing the doors open. Smash held the doors open until Jim Kim had pushed the trolley through and was clear. The minivan was still bleeding for attention on the other side of the building. Smash ran ahead, depressing the start button on the Sorrento's key remote. In its parking spot 20 yards away, the little Kia coughed and came to life. Jim Kim shoved the trolley over the parking lot. He looked side to side as much as the helmet would allow. Out of his limited peripherals, he saw 2 figures moving by the dumpster enclosure, the signature halting step of the infected. "I told you, this plan sucks," Jim Kim said, gasping from the exertion after weeks of lying around the condo, stuffing himself with junk food. "We got this. Load the car," Smash said. He had the doors and trunk open. Jim Kim slammed the trolley into the rear of the Sorrento and began heaving bags and boxes into the trunk. He turned his head to see Smash approaching 2 figures shambling toward him from the dumpster enclosure. The largest was a beefy guy in mechanic's overalls. His lower jaw swung loose on a hinge of muscle. The second was a woman in a sundress dragging a greasy train of her own entrails behind her. They both stank enough to make Jim Kim regret that thawed pizza dinner. Clouds of flies swarmed around them in a filthy, buzzing contrail of tiny black specks. Smash stepped up close and swung at the mechanic's head. And missed. Jim Kim pivoted his head around to look for more newcomers, but the helmet was too large, and his head turned inside the helmet, blinding him. He tore it off his head and threw it aside in time to see a guy crossing the lot toward him, stumbling over a concrete wheel stop. The guy was barefoot and in his underwear. His upper body was singed like a burnt steak. The whites of his eyes stared lidless from scorched flesh. "Hey!" Jim Kim called. Smash was busy. He'd embedded the axe head in the mechanic's skull. He had a foot on the corpse's chest and was trying to free the blade from the bone. The woman in the sundress was closing on him, hands outstretched and grasping. Her mouth worked in a wordless shout. Jim Kim picked up the discarded football helmet and beamed the underwear guy in the head. The guy ignored it and kept coming. Jim Kim spun left and right, keeping the trolley between them. He looked past the guy, who was hissing between lips partially seared shut, to see 3 more infected coming from behind 2 garage buildings. One was a little girl with her hands gnawed off. Shit! The scorched guy was trying to climb over the cargo on the trolley, hungry eyes fixed on his prey. His fingers flexed and closed. Jim Kim released the handle and backed away. The trolley rumbled to a halt against the Sorrento. "We have to go! Now!" Jim Kim howled. "Fuck that! Load the car!" Smash trotted up and drove the blunt end of the axe into the scorched guy's face, spilling him from the trolley. The trunk was loaded to capacity. The door would never close on the amount of crap they had stuffed inside. Jim Kim threw the rest of the luggage into the back seat. He glanced back. The mechanic lay unmoving with his skull caved in. The lady in the sundress was now missing a leg and making slow progress as she was hopelessly tangled in a slick welter of her own guts. "Loaded!" Jim Kim called out. "Shotgun!" Smash yelled, backing to the Sorrento with a gore-crusted axe in his fists. Jim Kim gunned the engine, and they were off into the wilds of their dead new world. 6. They pulled into the lot of a strip mall a few blocks away. Jim Kim brought the car to a stop in an open area. Leaving the Sorrento running, they jumped out to tear off the parkas and throw them aside. Smash flung his helmet away to bounce over the cracked paving. They were both soaked through in sweat. Jim Kim returned to his seat behind the wheel. Smash stood looking across the lot. "I'd like to get there before dark," Jim Kim said. "See that? A cop car," Smash said. A police car was pulled up at an angle to a burger place near the front of the lot. The driver door was open. A pair of blue-clad legs poked out from inside. "So what?" Jim Kim said, but Smash was already trotting across the lot toward the car. Jim Kim put the Sorrento in gear and followed after him. A cop lay back on the front seat. It was clear enough to Smash what had happened. Suicide. The cop had a pair of bites out of one arm. He'd blown his own brains out all over the inside of the Prowler rather than join in the marching morons on the streets. Smash held his breath and pinched his nose closed with one hand. He leaned over the bloated carcass to feel around the floor. He came up with a gun. A Glock. Smash knew the model from the first-person shooters he played. He shoved it into the waistband of his jeans. The Sorrento pulled up close, motor purring. Jim Kim rolled down the window to hiss through his teeth, trying to get Smash's attention. Smash was practically straddling the dead cop, struggling to unbuckle the gun belt stretched tight over the swollen belly. His efforts caused a blast of trapped gas to escape when the cop's sphincter released. Gagging, Smash clambered backwards out of the cop car. His eyes teared in the noxious cloud of corpse fart. Jim Kim covered his mouth with a hand, raised the window, and turned the AC to max. Smash leaned on the cop car and spewed what remained of the unfrozen pizza. He wiped his lips on his arm and returned to trying to free the gun belt. With the collar of his t-shirt pulled up over his nose, Smash pulled the body out of the car. It flopped to the ground, limbs loose. The shattered skull bumped on the rocker panel, spilling maggoty bits of brain tissue. As Smash worked to free the holster, Jim Kim scanned the lot. A tapping sound made him turn to look at the windows of the burger place. A pair of kids, a boy and a girl, stood inside. They dragged fingers down the glass. Their skin was waxy and translucent. Jim Kim thought at first they were both wearing sunglasses, but realized that their eyes were covered in flies teeming to get at the moisture within. The little girl, maybe 8 years old, pressed her face to the glass. Her tongue moved against the glass like a gray snail. Jim Kim looked away. "I got it," Smash said, returning to the car. He shoved the pistol into the holster and held the belt on his lap. "It stinks." Jim Kim winced and turned away as he pulled from the lot. "I'll clean it up. We need a gun. I tried to get the shotgun, but it's locked to the dash somehow. Couldn't find the keys." Smash was grinning at his prize. "It's got 2 extra magazines, a cop flashlight, cuffs, pepper spray." A cop radio. You stink, Jim Kim said, and rolled his window down to allow fresh air to wash over him. It all stinks. The world stinks. It's the new normal, Smash said, leaning forward to fix the gun belt around his waist. Jim Kim drove with his head out the car window. The wind whipped through his hair. He was 2 months overdue for a haircut. Shame I couldn't find the keys. We could have switched to a cop car. How cool would that be? Smash said. Nothing about this is cool, Jim Kim thought. 7. The on-ramps and approaches to the interstate were jammed with abandoned cars and trucks. Somewhere up on an overpass, a multi-vehicle fire smoldered. They stayed to surface roads, Jim Kim steering the Sorrento around obstacles in the road. He tried to keep them to broader 4-lane roads, but sometimes they had to drive through parking lots to move around gridlocks. The remains of bodies were everywhere, unidentifiable heaps of clothing with clouds of flies hovering over them. The fresher kills had black turkey vultures gathered around them. Neither Smash nor Jim Kim had ever seen vultures in town. Now they were everywhere in bunches along curbs, perched atop street lamps, or wheeling in the sky. It didn't look this bad on TV, Smash said. Uh-huh, Jim Kim said. The dead would turn at the sound of the approaching car and make to pursue it at a pathetic pace. Jim Kim watched them in the side view mirror as they stumbled in the Sorrento's wake in a hopeless attempt to keep up. The rear view was obscured by the pile of luggage stacked to capacity in the rear seat. There was something else they hadn't seen on TV. Bed sheets hung from the windows of some of the apartment buildings and from the second stories of homes. They saw one strung up in front of a donut palace. They hung like flags or banners. On each one, a number was painted or smeared large enough to read from the street. 6, 3, 5, 2. They didn't see any numbers as large as 2 digits. What's that about? Jim Kim said, leaning low as he drove to look at a print bedsheet with a blue number 4 smeared on the cloth like finger paints. Beats me, Smash said. They drove along a 3-lane road that paralleled the interstate, weaving around piles of rubbish, abandoned cars, and the occasional rotting pedestrian. The streets were quiet, except for the purr of the Sorrento. A sound reached them through the silence as they neared an intersection with a road that would take them under the interstate and closer to Tooltown. It was a crackling noise with a harsh, mechanical tone. As it grew louder and closer, it became clearer. A voice. A man's voice. Under it was the rising rumble of engine noise. Pull in, park here, right now, Smash said. Jim Kim jerked the Sorrento right toward the curb just shy of the intersection. He pulled in at an angle and backed up to turn his wheels. It's not a goddamn driving test. Just pull in and cut the motor, Smash hissed, gripping the wheel. Jim Kim did as he was told. They both ducked low, eyes peeping over the dash. A 3-story block of apartments obscured their view of a vehicle approaching on the cross street. The engine rose to a throaty growl. The voice became louder, the words more distinct. Limit of 1 item of carry-on of personal items. Firearms are prohibited. All are subject to search and seizure as well as medical examination. We reserve the right to refuse transport to anyone for any reason. Please make yourself visible with hands held away from your sides. A male voice, droning without inflection. Either a recording or someone reading from a printed form. The notice began again from the beginning, the voice echoing off the surrounding buildings. This is your State National Guard responding to evacuation order SHR 45. Stand in plain sight. There is a limit of 1 item of carry-on of personal items. Firearms are prohibited. A Humvee rolled into the intersection doing 20. Large cones of a public address system were mounted atop the roof. It hooked a slow left. In its wake followed two camouflaged military trucks with 3 school buses behind. The buses had chicken wire screens bolted over the windows. As the buses passed by, Jim Kim was able to see people at the windows. A teenage girl was laughing at something someone else said. An old man looked through the glass and wire with a face frozen in shock and sadness. A black kid of about 12 was looking out the window with a vague expression. He had earbuds in his ears and nodded in time with the music coming through them. His eyes met Jim Kim's. If he was surprised to see an Asian guy watching him over the window ledge of a Kia, the kid gave no indication. And then the bus was past them and gone. Bringing up the rear of the convoy was another Humvee, this one with a machine gun mounted in a turret atop it. A soldier in a helmet and face mask leaned on the gun, turning his head left and right. He racked back the bolt on the big gun. In the side view mirror, Jim Kim saw the soldier in the turret pick off a pair of infected staggering along the sidewalk. Expertly placed short bursts shredded them from the waist up. The remains tumbled to the walk. Another infected soul ambulated into the street and was struck by the first of the school buses. The rest followed, bumping over the form until it was crushed to a puddle. The repeated notice sounded, receding to a tinny buzzing as the convoy moved south toward the center of the city. "Where are they taking them?" Jim Kim said, sitting up once the last vehicle was out of sight behind them. He restarted the Sorrento and hooked to the left to take them under the interstate. "A camp, probably," Smash said. "Maybe we should have waved them down." "A concentration camp, bro." "You think it's like that?" "How else could it be? Get everyone in one place where they watch them. Feed them government rice and beans until that runs out. We don't want that. That's not us. We're free range, Jimmy. We go our own way." "But the camp is an option if Tooltown turns out to be a loser, right?" Jim Kim said. "We'll call that Plan F. If all else fails, we get back on the bus," Smash said. "Is there a Plan B, C, and D?" "Sure there is. I have it all up here." Smash grinned, tapping a finger on his skull. Jim Kim wondered again why he was willing to go along with the disaster planning of a college dropout. The only reasoning he had was it was easier to keep on with Smash than to think for himself. Thinking for himself would mean that Jim Kim had to face the reality that, except for Smash, he was alone in the world. At least this way, he was moving forward with someone else rather than by himself. The ugly truth was that, in this broken world, he would never see his family again, even if they did manage to survive this catastrophe. "I figured out what those bedsheets are about," Smash said. Jim Kim drove on without responding, piloting through a flurry of turkey vultures startled by the passage of the Sorrento. "They're distress symbols, like a ship at sea. The numbers are the numbers of survivors inside," Smash said as they passed a building from which fluttered a paisley print sheet with a big 3 spray-painted on it. The 3 had been crossed out and replaced with a hastily scrawled 1. 8. "Western is up ahead. We'll want to hang a right," Smash said. "I know where it is. I was just here at Christmas last year," Jim Kim said. "Just helping out, bro. Navigating. You look like you need some help. You were pretty shook up back there. And you weren't?" "I'm maintaining. Keeping it together. Don't worry about me." Smash was straining to keep his voice even. Jim Kim noticed the skin around his mouth was white. "I'm not. I'm worried about me for listening to you and leaving the condo," Jim Kim said. "This is gonna work out great for us. You just wait and see," Smash said. Western Avenue was a jumble of abandoned cars. Jim Kim shifted lanes and weaved between cars and trucks. A few were burnt-out hulks. Some were bullet-pocked. A tractor-trailer lay on its side. The back was opened, and an avalanche of spilled cartons spread across 3 lanes. It looked like a battlefield. There were remains of bodies lying between cars, dropped where they stood in whatever confrontation happened here. Impossible to tell whether they'd been infected or healthy when they were gunned down. Now they were just filthy piles of bones and rags. The main entrance for the stores at Wellington was on the left. A big sign made of faux carved wood stood on a landscaped island that divided the entrance and exit lanes. Jim Kim swung left into the entrance, past once manicured hedges. The shopping center was a vast collection of standalone big-box stores, a supersized, upscale strip mall. Deep shadows were engulfing the storefronts and parking lot as the sun sank lower in the sky. "Slow down. We might not be alone here," Smash said. "You think someone else had our idea?" "Could be. Only makes sense, right?" Jim Kim pulled past a vast supermarket building. The front windows were smashed out. A pickup truck was sitting where it had been used to ram through the entrance. Trash was everywhere where it lay in heaps around overturned shopping carts. The scorched remains of a semi-truck sat in front. The blackened ribs of the trailer were twisted and collapsed by the heat. The Sorrento purred on toward the back of the lot. The bookstore was the only untouched structure. The drugstore, clothing store, and mega discount market were busted open. Like the supermarket, the lots around them were strewn with debris. Cars out front were left where their owners either died or abandoned them. Even the pet supply store showed signs of being ransacked. The lot was well populated with infected, but not in any great concentrations. Small knots of 5 or 6 ambled around between rows of parked cars or along storefronts. They grew aroused at the sight of the little Kia and made to follow. The car gained 100 yards on the closest group as it moved deeper into the 100-acre parking area. Jim Kim pulled up to Tooltown. The store looked mostly intact. The security gate was drawn down over the 2 main entrances. The glass behind had spiderwebs of cracks. The glass had held intact in spite of that. The steel gate that secured the garden center was still drawn closed and secured in place with chains and locks on the inside. The 8-foot-high fence of steel rods was still in place. The long facade of the structure looked entirely untouched. There was only one car, a beat-up station wagon pulled up to a front spot. The only movement before the storefront was a gaggle of turkey vultures fluttering around a heap of rags at the curb. "Looks like you might have been right. No one's broken in," Jim Kim said, leaning on the steering wheel. "Told you," Smash said. "How do we get in?" "Seriously? You didn't think I had that worked out?" Smash shook his ring of keys, jangling them in Jim Kim's face. 9. Shit. Smash tried another key. Shit. And another. Shit. "Are you sure you have it?" Jim Kim said, standing by the stack of luggage and boxes taken from the Sorrento and piled on the raised loading dock. "It's here. I know it is." Smash twirled the key ring, looking for the one that would open the rear access door to the interior of Tooltown's loading area. "Why do you have all those keys?" "I made copies of my work keys for every job I ever had." "Why?" "Souvenirs. You have a criminal's mind, but not a criminal's balls." "Let's just be glad I have the keys," Smash hissed at him. "So far, I see nothing to be glad about," Jim Kim said. He bounced from foot to foot, watching either corner of the building for movement. Tooltown backed up on a service corridor. Empty trailers and some Connex containers stood in a row along a sagging cyclone fence. The other side of the fence was a thick brush of sumac. The dark and silent span of the interstate rose up a half-mile across the band of trees. "See, smartass," Smash snorted when a key slid into the slot. He turned it, and the lock inside answered with an oiled click. He depressed the thumb pedal on the door handle and pulled. The door remained in place. Smash tugged harder. He braced a foot on the jamb and jerked on the handle with all his weight. The door remained solid and unmoving in the frame. "You said you could unlock it." "It's not unlocked. Why isn't it unlocked?" Jim Kim said in an urgent rush. "New plan." Smash said and leapt from the dock. What plan? Jim Kim followed using the steel steps. Smash stood by the Sorrento and pointed along the rear wall of the building. There's a ladder to the roof. We climb up and find a way down, but we need to drive the car closer. What about our stuff? Jim Kim glanced back at the messy heap of bags and boxes piled atop the dock. Who's gonna bother it? We get inside, unbolt the rear door, and drag it in. Same basic plan, different means. Smash got behind the wheel. Jim Kim took the passenger seat. When the engine gunned to life, the headlights fell on two figures stepping from the black shadows between Connex containers. One guy in a supermarket smock stained black with dried blood, another guy in pajama pants with ribs gleaming white through ripped flesh. Their unblinking eyes glowed white in the glare of the lights. We need to come back later, Jim Kim said, gripping the dash. To hell with that. Smash gunned the car forward to slalom between the oncoming dead. The bumper clipped the bag boy hard enough to spill him to the ground. The pajama guy was sideswiped hard. His body struck the passenger door with a wet thud. The impact tore the side view mirror free. Smash pulled the Sorrento close up against the back wall of the building, parking it so that it was situated directly under the bottom rung of a steel access ladder that ended 6 feet from the ground. The car was inches from the wall on the passenger side. You'll have to get out my side, Smash said as he exited. Jim Kim slid over the center console in an awkward scramble. Smash was already on the roof of the car and pulling himself up onto the ladder. The handle of the fire axe waggled where Smash had stuck it through the gun belt slung around his hips. The crash had taken down one of the infected. The pajama guy lay still, his skull smashed over the asphalt in a shiny black trail. The bag boy had risen and was limping their way. His thick tongue worked in his mouth, eyes staring in mute hunger. Jim Kim climbed up on the Sorrento, the soles of his sneakers squeaking on the finish. He gripped the handholds and hauled himself up until he raised a leg high enough to place a foot on the bottom rung. The wall was 40 feet to the roof where Smash leaned over the edge, waiting for him with an outstretched hand to help him clamber over. 3 triangular sunroof structures ran parallel the length of the building. Smash moved along the sunroofs, cupping his hands around his eyes and pressing his face to the glass. There was nothing to be seen through the grimy glass but a black abyss. What are you looking for? Jim Kim said. That back door was bolted from the inside, Smash said. That means there's someone inside? Maybe. More likely the last person out left through another exit. Smash hefted the axe and moved to a hatch set in the roof near big boxy air conditioning units. The hatch was a trap door set in a raised frame on the roof surface. The door was secured in place by a heavy padlock run through a hasp. This might take a while, Smash said. He raised the axe and brought the blunt end down on the barrel of the lock. It leapt in the hasp, then came to rest, unmarked. Jim Kim walked back to the hoops of the access ladder and looked over the side. The bag boy was pawing his way around the Sorrento, its face turned upwards at the ringing sound of Smash hacking away at the lock. Eyes unmoving and mouth slack, staring up in dull wonder at where its prey had vanished. The obscene tongue moved over lips crusted with dried blood. The gaze locked on Jim Kim. The bag boy's hands rose to grasp empty air. A gurgling sound escaped from somewhere deep within its rotting torso. Jim Kim could smell the stink of it from where he crouched. Motherfuck! Smash exhaled and sat down on the gravel by the hatch. The axe was across his knees. Fresh sweat had sprung up on his face and neck. Jim Kim stepped closer to see that the surface of the lock gleamed in a few places where the axe blade had scarred the finish. Want me to take a turn? No, I promised I'd get us in, and I'm going to get us in. Just give me a minute, okay? Smash gasped, waving a feeble hand before him. Jim Kim walked across the roof to the front face of Tooltown. The sun had gone down. Figures moved across the dark lot. They approached between haphazardly abandoned cars and shopping carts. They moved under the shadows cast by dogwood and blue spruce planted in decorative blocks meant to break up the landscape of empty paving. Jim Kim stopped counting after 42. There was easily 100 of the dead shambling, staggered, tripping and crawling from all over the 100-acre lot. Their destination was clear. Tool Town. The metallic beat of the axe resumed, sending echoes over the large empty space. 10. "You have to stop that," Jim Kim commanded. "Bullshit. I have this bitch. By the ass," Smash huffed. The lock looked much the same as before. A few more shallow gouges. There were more dents to the lip of the door than before. "You're making too much noise. You're drawing attention to us," Jim Kim whispered. "So? It's not like they could climb up here after us." "You're so sure of that? You want to bet on that?" Smash shrugged. "And even if they can't get up here, it's going to be harder to get back down with the crowd that's gathering," Jim Kim said. "We're committed, Jim. All in. We have to get this fucker open," Smash said. He levered himself to his feet with the support of the axe and turned back to the hatch. Jim Kim snatched the axe from his hand and backed away. Smash reached for it. Jim Kim stepped further away. "We need to think about this. You always rush in and I always follow. Let's take a second and think. Just this one time," Jim Kim said, backpedaling. "Okay, all right. I'm beat anyway." Smash stopped and lowered his hands. They walked back to the hatch together. Jim Kim crouched to look at the lock. It had a brass barrel and curved shackle of tempered steel. He looked at the blade of the axe. It was nicked all along the edge where it had struck the unyielding lock. He ran his hand around the lip of the door. It was held down snug with little give when he yanked upward. His fingers touched the hasp welded to the door. "This is white metal. Softer. You should have been chopping here," Jim Kim said, standing. Smash bent to look at the hasp. He took the axe from Jim Kim and hefted it before bringing it down on the hasp. 6 chops broke the hasp off at the weld, and the lock clattered free. Smash hooked the end of the blade under the hatch and lifted. It raised easy on twin scissor hinges. He sniffed the warm air rising from within. "Doesn't smell like rotting flesh," he said. Jim Kim sniffed and nodded. There was an oily smell, but nothing organic. "Look at us, Jimmy. Masters of the castle." Smash smiled and lowered a leg over the side to the rung of a stand ladder leading down into the black interior. The ladder ended in a utility room. They both stood with eyes pressed closed. When they opened them again, they could see the block-walled room dominated by ductwork growing down through the ceiling like roots from the air conditioner units on the roof. The room had a strong smell of grease to it. A single door led from the room. It was unlocked. They both sighed with relief. "From here, there's fire stairs down to the main floor. It takes us to a corridor. Off that are the offices, restrooms, the break room, and storage," Smash said. He took the cop flashlight from the belt and shone its powerful LED beam before them. Jim Kim followed cautiously down the fire stairs, a hand on the round railing. They reached the ground floor and moved along the corridor, brushing their hands along a wall. Some rats skipped along before them, staying just ahead of the white beam of light cast from the flashlight. The corridor smelled of stale coffee. That was the overriding odor. The stink of rotting flesh was still absent. "Hungry?" Smash said. The ancient smell of coffee embedded in every surface sharpened Kim's appetite. He realized that he was starving. Neither of them had eaten since finishing the unfrozen pizzas the night before. In the storage area, they found pallets loaded with snacks. Case lots of protein bars, candy, pretzels, chips, crackers, and trail mix were piled by stacks of soda, bottled water, and juices in cases and shrink wrap. Some had been gnawed by rats making entrances for themselves. Most were intact. Smash set the flashlight on top of a stack of soda cases. They opened some cases that remained sealed and enjoyed a feast of junk food and warm soda. "This may have been a good idea after all," Jim Kim said, his cheeks chipmunk full of chocolate-dipped pretzels. "Right? Was I right?" Smash grinned and scooped a cracker into a tiny tub of cheese before tossing it into mouth. "We could live here for years." "I told you I had a plan, bro." From somewhere beyond the pool of light rose an animal growl. Somewhere close. A pair of eyes glowed in the shaking light of the flashlight's beam held in Smash's quivering hand. The eyes shone like silver dollars in the dark, twin moons of menace. "They growl now?" Jim Kim said, his voice cracking to falsetto. "It's an animal. A feral animal," Smash said. He held the light as steady as he could on the pair of eyes while reaching down to bring the Glock from the holster. He raised the weapon into the dark toward the steady rumbling snarl. "You don't want to do that." It was a voice behind them. Male, deep, a touch of a southern accent. Lower the piece and get to your knees, both of you." The voice came closer. Without turning, Smash and Jim Kim knelt on the floor. "Place the piece on the floor." Smash did so. "Tips of your fingers only. Slide it out of reach." Smash flexed his fingers, and the Glock skittered over the polished concrete. "Sit, Wendy." The growling stopped. They could hear a panting sound. A dog. "Lie flat, on your bellies, hands on heads." The voice was directly behind them. They did as they were told. Booted feet moved near. Hands patted them down from shoulders to ankles. The hands emptied pockets and dug beneath their shirts. "Okay. Come back up on your knees. Hands on heads." Smash and Jim Kim came upright. A guy holding a serious-looking rifle stood before them. They both knew it as an M4 from using one to battle terrorists, gangstas, and monsters on their Xbox. Neither of them had ever seen one in real life. This guy looked like he was born with a weapon in his hands. He was a few years older than them and taller. He wore some kind of body armor chest protector over a stained flannel shirt. He had a beard that looked like he'd been growing it a while. "You the ones making all the noise?" he said. His voice lost its sharp command quality. He lowered the rifle. "Yeah," Smash said and swallowed. Jim Kim stared at the guy, his lips pressed shut. Both lowered their eyes to the floor. "You think that was smart?" "I'm having second thoughts." "Stupid. Me and Wendy have been quiet, living here for weeks. Most of the Gomers forgot about us, wandered away." "Wendy?" Smash said, glancing up. "Come on, girl, meet the neighbors," the guy said. A black and tan German shepherd padded into the circle of light to stand by the guy, nose moving as it sniffed the pair of quaking newcomers. "You two seem harmless enough, but I'll take this so you don't hurt yourself." The guy picked up the Glock. "Now get up on your feet and tell me your story," the guy said, releasing the rifle to hang on its sling. 12. His name was Richard Kazadesis. After hearing their background, he told them to call him Kaz. He led them through the dark of the enormous empty space by the maglite he had snapped to the top rail of his rifle. Kaz guided them around tripwires strung at ankle height across the aisles. The wires were hung with cans with ball bearings in them. An alarm system in case anyone broke into Tooltown. "Not that I needed it with you two," he said. They came to a wooden structure built between two shelf towers that lined one of the corridors. It was made of a 2x4 frame sheathed with plywood. It had one entrance, a decorative wooden entrance door with a single window pane set at eye level. Kaz unlocked the door, and the dog trotted in before Smash and Jim Kim. The interior had a patio chair and table, as well as a bunk made from PVC piping, with a mattress of flower-patterned seat pads taken from a patio lounger. There were some books and magazines on the table, and a steel ammo box slid under the bed. Kaz reached up to snap on a switch, and a couple of battery-powered camping lanterns lit the room in a bluish glow. "Welcome to my burrow. First 2 nights here, the size of the place was making me a little crazy," Kaz said, and swept some books off the bunk to make a place for them to sit. Smash looked up to see that the single room had no roof on it. An aluminum ladder leaned against a wall where it allowed escape up onto the steel merchandise shelves on one side of the aisle. "Always need another way out," Kaz said, noting Smash's interest. He pulled a couple of Cokes from an open case and tossed them to his guests. "Looks like you had the same idea as us," Smash said. Jim Kim sipped silently beside him. "What was that?" Kaz said, leaning back in his patio chair, rifle across his knees. The dog lay under his chair, eyes on the newcomers from between the legs. Smash explained the plan that he and Jim Kim worked out, how they'd fort up in Tooltown and outlive and outlast for as long as they could. He explained all of his careful reasoning. He even unfolded the page torn from the legal pad listing all of his survival priorities and offered it for Kaz to look at. "I wasn't thinking that far ahead, just looking for a place for me and Wendy to hole up and try to figure all this shit out. But you lay out an ambitious scenario, boy," Kaz said. "You got here first," Smash said. "It's a big place, lots of room, and it's not like I can throw you out to the Gomers." "Gomers?" Jim Kim spoke up. "That's what I call them. I used to work as an EMT. Drove an ambulance for County General. They'd have these deadbeats show up all the time, faking symptoms to get a warm bed for the night. Homeless guys, you know. Docs call them Gomers." "Why Gomers?" Smash said. "Stands for Get Out of My Emergency Room." Smash glanced at Jim Kim. And Gomers it would be.